I would say the last 48 hours has been very difficult for a lot of people. It's been tough, and we sympathize with this whole situation, all the parties involved, this young woman, what she went through. You really feel bad for that whole situation, and ultimately this is a legal situation. We don't know all the facts, and that's what makes it hard. But at this time, we just think it's the best move for everyone to move on from Matt and let him take care of this situation and focus on that. And so we're going to part ways there. I know it's a question of when did we hear this, or what was the timeline. Late July, from her representative, spoke to Catherine and laid out some of the things that they were accusing Matt and others of. And at that time, our process, we tried to be thorough and thoughtful, and not rush to judgment. And I would say it's not easy. You're trying to put facts around a legal situation, sometimes with limited information. And so, ultimately that's where we're at today with the decision. I hope you understand. I know you've got a lot of questions for me and or Sean, but with it being a legal situation, I hope you respect that there's certain things that we won't be able to discuss.
Why did you feel at this time was the appropriate time to move on from that?
Just ultimately, we thought it was best for everybody, just for Matt to be able to. It's a very serious situation, Heather, and with the serious nature of allegations, and we just can't. We don't have the means to put all the facts together, and there's multiple versions of what happened, and he's a football coach, I'm a GM. Like, we don't have access to everything, and so that's more important than playing football. And so we want Matt to focus on that.
And the accuser's attorney said that you guys never asked for a statement from his client. Is that true?
Catherine spoke to him and got some of these things. I think it sounded like he expected her to return a call after that. Her understanding was she heard what he had to say, and that's when we began our process.
What did your process include after that?
Doing the best we could with our resources, talking to the league, using our people to try and find information. But, ultimately, Elena, there's a lot of things that we have not pieced together even today. We were just trying to do the best we could and be thoughtful and not rush to judgment.
Is there something that you feel like now, looking back, could have been done better over that period so you had more information that, came since Thursday, that you could have had that information sooner?
We, other than this civil accusation that was filed, we didn't have anything. There's not been a criminal case. So we were just going off of that, plus Matt's version of events, plus reaching out to various people that we have in law to try and find out the information. But again, it's an ongoing investigation, and so a lot of times we weren't given everything that's going on.
So what changed? What was Matt in his
How transparent was Matt? I mean, Matt gave us his version of events, and that's where it's at.
What would be the discrepancy between what you felt at the time Thursday was a thorough examination versus what you've come to learn before it is?
Yeah, I mean, as thorough as we could be with what we were able to get our hands on. we probably should have said ongoing. It wasn't completed. Like it's, Tim, we don't have it. We don't have a lot of things right now. We really don't. This is very serious. And as I said, he's a coach, I'm a GM. Like we just decided that the most important thing is not about football. It's about letting Matt go handle this, and that's where it's at.
So, Brian, my question is similar to Tim's in some ways, but what has changed in the last 48 hours that you've reached a different conclusion than the conclusion that you reached in July when you first learned of these allegations?
Jay, when you hear them, you're just trying to not rush to judgment. Okay? You're trying to use as much time as you can to find out what you can find out. And that's the best I can tell you, is that we're not perfect, okay? We've tried to do everything. Like in our society, you hear things, you try and go find out what's factual and what's an accusation. And that's the best we could do. Ultimately, we don't know. We're not detectives. We don't have the evidence. And there's many things that we could not get our hands on through the resources that we have. This was about not a football move, about letting Matt go handle this situation.
With that being said, what made you comfortable earlier this past week moving on from that talk, understanding what you did to that point of what was potentially being accused of Matt Araiza?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't a civil case. There was no criminal case. It was what we had was accusations that could come forward, and we were still piecing it together. Obviously, 48 hours ago or sometime around then, a civil case was filed, and we read through that and, you know, again, circled back with Matt to try and again, it's a lot of things that right now we can't close the loop on.
So do you feel like Matt Araiza, do you feel like there was information that he withheld or information that he wasn't being forthcoming about? Like, I guess what I'm getting at is how much new information between when you first heard about this, when you first talked to Matt Araiza, and now, where's that gap? Like, how much more new information has there been to come to this conclusion?
I mean, there was more than what we originally got from Catherine from her conversation, and it was detailed out in that whatever 11-page deal, but nothing changed from Matt's version of what he says transpired. But this again, Heather, was back to this is bigger than football, and let's just step back and you go handle this. That's what we thought was most important.
Brandon, would this have raised any red flags during the scouting process? Had you known about this, or did you know about this? And had you known about this, would it have raised any red flags when it came to draft?
Yeah, I mean, we did not know about this, and the league did not know about this, and you know, I know people are out there trying to find out. There's no one. We've reached out to, I can tell you, double-digit teams at this point, and no one had anything on this. These names were sealed, wherever the investigation was at that point, John. Yes, if we had this, and we get things like this from guys, you know how important the character and the culture is to Sean and me, and anything that would have been lingering, that would have been off our board.
Do you guys plan to continue investigating to try to learn the facts, or since he's no longer with the team, is that not in the plans?
We're just going to let the legal process play out, and that's really where it's at.
When was the decision made to move on from him, and versus maybe contractual things that had to be settled, to sort through, whether it be with the Players Association or whatever?
You know, Sean and I have been meeting with multiple people ever since, you know, I don't know how he coached the game. Like, I mean, it was, he did a heck of a job being able to stand up there and do that. And we've been doing it since we got our hands on the 11-page document. And with our legal team, the league, you know, but this afternoon, we decided that this was the best thing, and that's why I thought Sean made a good decision last night to push pause and let us get back here and surround ourselves with the people that are the experts with this.
So obviously, just to reiterate, the 11-page civil suit document brought to light a lot of facts or charges that you weren't fully appraised of.
Well, they were accusations, and it clarified exactly what they were, and at that point, it's a real civil case. It's not this may happen. It's something that you have to respond to, and at this point, we're not the judge and jury. We don't have that, and we just, again, this is bigger than football, Mark, and our culture here is more important to us than winning football games.
On that note, Sean, I talked to Mike in the locker room, and he mentioned high character organization, we pride ourselves on culture. Did you hear from players at all about this, or what was maybe the conversations you have with the players about this?
Yeah, I respect where you're coming from on that, Sal. It's, I have a lot of trust in the players that we have here and the veteran players that have been with us, Micah being one of them. That said, this was, I think it was important to try and separate a little bit of that, obviously factor that in, but this has to be what we feel is the right thing. And in respect to them, they don't know, some of the things that were going on here. So, as Brandon said, we've tried to sort through a lot of information. It's ongoing, and I think that's, to me, been one of the harder parts of this, is that it's ongoing and information continues to flow, it seems. And so I understand where you're coming from. Yes, I have a lot of faith and trust in those guys, but at the same time, we had to make sure this was a separate situation here.
Brandon, in retrospect, would it have been better to have contacted the victim's attorney just to get some idea of what was going on? Because that seemed to be the one thing that didn't seem to, that fell through the cracks of the situation.
Yeah, I mean, when he first made Catherine aware of this, I would say we had the boulders of what was going to be accused or alleged, but at that point it wasn't an actual case, and there was, one of the things you look in is, where is this criminally? Like, is this going to be that's what you're trying to find out without, and so we were just, again, trying to look at everything. One of those things on there is if true, would be a no-go for us. You know what I mean? So we didn't need all that. We just needed to try and put as many facts together as we could in a limited amount of time.
There was a lot of outrage. I would say it's borderline universal outrage from fans, from the community. What do you think you need to do as an organization to address, after having built up culture, reputation, things that were pretty galvanized, seems to have taken some hits here? What do you think you need to do to, whether it be internally but also externally, handle any damage that's been done?
Yeah, I mean, Tim, I think, I would ask that you don't rush to judgment, and that, that's all we've tried to do is put the facts together. We don't know what happened. We were not there at this incident. And, I would hope that what Sean and I have done here since we got here in 2017, that we're trying to do our best. We don't have all the answers. We're not perfect. But I can tell you, as Sean said earlier, we've just tried to do what was right. And has everything been perfect? No. But in our heart of hearts, I can lay my head down at night knowing that I've tried to do what's right, and I know he has too.
organization's vetting process and the way you guys look into players and anything like that after this?
When you say vetting, like when we drafted him,
Well, vetting, just finding information out, or when these accusations came up, you mentioned a thorough investigation.
Yeah.
And still not being able to find out everything. Do you plan on evaluating the ways you went about that as an organization and trying to improve?
yeah, I mean, we definitely look at our process, and that starts with me making sure that we communicate, and you know, every situation's different. It's very hard sometimes in certain cases like this. You know, if you're involving someone who was supposedly a minor at the time, of getting actual information. So all we were trying to do was use our resources in the time we had, to put the pieces together to find out what happened. And Matt was very aware, if anything, was not, on the up and up during our process, that we would remove him. And, but once this became a civil case 2 days ago, it was very serious of nature, and we felt it was in Matt's best interest.
So along those lines, if a civil lawsuit was never filed, would he still be on the team?
We were still digging, so potentially. I mean, I don't. To Jay, all we were doing is trying to find the facts, and until a lawsuit's filed, there was nothing out there other than a potential accusation. There was no criminal case, so that's what we were doing.
Well, there is an ongoing criminal investigation.
Yes, investigation. No charges.
And Jay, I would just say we were trying all along to stay on top of the information that was out there. So from my seat, that's been one of the hardest things to do, is because it's ongoing, as you said. So that's where I'm at on it.
There is at least a perception, I would think, that when you cut Matt off, that you were satisfied with what you learned up until that point, that he has got this job. Is there anything that can be said regarding that it seems as though you had reached a satisfaction that everything's going to be fine?
Yeah, I mean, that's a tough one, Tim. You can second guess, whether that was the right move, and we'll definitely look at that going forward if this situation or a similar situation happens.
What's the obligation of any player / his agent in a process like this? Obviously, we're talking about Matt Araiza, but he knew there was an investigation. His agent should have known there was an investigation. Nobody told you about this, apparently. What is your level of dissatisfaction with his unwillingness or refusal to tell you that he was going through this?
His agent did not know, and our understanding, without getting into it, is that Matt learned sometime this summer that he was being investigated, and that's when he hired. I don't know the date, but I believe he hired his attorney sometime around the time when we found out.
So you found out about this from Matt Araiza first, or you found out about this first from the accuser's attorney?
I don't remember the order of events on that one, Heather. It was around the same time.
Were you in contact with his attorney, though, about this?
With Matt's attorney, yes. Once we got her accusations from her attorney, and then after we spoke to Matt about his version of events, he said yes, his parents had hired him an attorney, and so we contacted him as well.
Brandon, how much did his version of the events change from the first time you spoke with him to the last?
I mean, I'm not going to get into it, but it didn't.
Brandon, how much were the movers involved in this situation? To what degree were the conversations you had with them, and what were they telling you guys?
They were just gathering the information, like, mainly with Terry, but just like we were. We were trying to update them when there was new information. No.
Can you walk us through, I think maybe Thursday at about 6 o'clock when the article came out, the news might have broke, till the decision to not play him on Friday night, what that was like for you guys and how you ultimately arrived at that decision?
Yeah. I think Sean brought it up yesterday afternoon that, we were huddled up most of the, that evening, and then that it came out, and then yesterday and sometime in the afternoon, Sean brought that up, and I thought it was spot on.
Is there any plan from the organization to reach out again to the accuser's attorney or to her to discuss this further?
I think, I know the NFL is doing their part, so we'll follow their lead. It's a little bit of a different situation for them because it happened when he was not in the NFL, and so that was part of the roadblock too. But I think they're looking into it at this point now that it is a civil case, and we'll take their lead.
I would say, if I could, Tim, that I think you asked that question, that please understand that we are sympathetic to all involved. I think that is important. And so, yeah.
You mentioned all involved, being sympathetic to Matt yesterday. You said sending your prayers out to him. What was that? I mean, not saying what the conversation was like, but how did you take it?
Yeah, obviously he's going through it right now. I mean, it's, he's got a lot going on, and he seemed to understand. And I think when we spoke again this morning, that he agreed that was probably the best thing. And, I appreciate him understanding. And, it's, obviously an important decision, and one that I felt like was the right approach at the time.
Understanding that one phone call took place with the accuser's attorney, not with you guys, with your representation, why do you feel like that there wasn't more conversations during the process when you're trying to find out more information, reaching out to the accuser's representation as part of that process? Why do you think there weren't more conversations between you guys and them?
Well, we had the boulders of it, of what was being accused, and as I said, if any of those boulders, if we were able to piece together were accurate, our decision was simple, to move on from Matt. And so we were using the resources that we had to try and find any answers that we could. And again, it was very hard. I mean, I don't know that any more conversations with him would have changed anything. Because that was those accusations. We were just trying to get the facts. We were trying not to rush to judgment, and obviously Matt's version was different, and you want to give everyone as much due process as you can. Again, we're not a judge and a jury.
But I would say, Matt, we did take those very seriously, and I want everyone to understand that that's a serious deal right there. So I'm sorry.
We saw emotion in Sean Rose yesterday, and you had credited him for just getting through the game. How much has these 2 days shaken the team as a whole?
I mean, I think our culture that we rally around, and culture handles adversity, and it'll just be day by day, John. It's not easy. It's hard. We're going to do the best we can do.
How much impact in the reading of the civil suit, especially the portions that were allegedly deported with police listening in, and to see Matt Araiza's actual direct
I think, Tim, we considered everything. It's one of those not getting into the specifics of it. It's just, ultimately, with the seriousness of the whole deal, we thought it was best for Matt to move on.
You've mentioned that there are things that you can't address because of an ongoing investigation. Is that on the advice of attorneys for the team, or is that just your personal decision, or both of yours personal decisions?
No, I think it's the team of it's a legal situation, and we don't.
So you've been advised by whether it's the attorneys for the bills that there are certain things that you shouldn't address?
Yes.
Thank you. All right, thanks.